As usual, please don't take any screenshots, recordings, or photos of the call without the express permission of the AGJC. For a roundup of recent recordings of calls, you can check out the AGJC YouTube channel. With that out of the way, Huda, please.
Thank you, Jake, and I hope you're enjoying the hot weather in Manchester. It's boiling all over the place. Welcome to the AGJC's weekly Pre-Shabbat Zoom. Each week, we gather together the Jewish communities of all the 6 GCC countries and our families and friends from around the world to hear an inspirational message before Shabbat, light candles, hear a Dvar Torah, pray, and read a section from the weekly Torah portion. Today, we will hear from Ambassador Steve Bundy. I first met Steve and his family in 2004 on his first tour in Bahrain and had the pleasure of spending many Jewish holidays with them, including celebrating Rachel's bat mitzvah when I first arrived in DC in 2008. I'd like to wish her a mazel tov once again on her recent marriage. Since arriving in Bahrain, Steve has had a tremendous impact on Bahrain-US relations. And on a personal note, we are so happy that he and his wife, Megan, are part of our Shabbat Club. The Association of Gulf Jewish Communities is the umbrella organization for the Jewish communities of the GCC countries that are building and enhancing Jewish life in the region. While each community is independent, we share a common goal and vision for Jewish life to flourish in the Gulf for the benefit of both residents and visitors. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will continue to join us every week. To stay updated on AGJC events, please follow us on Twitter at Gulf Jewish and visit our website, www.gulfjewish.org. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Huda. Spending a year in the Gulf has adjusted my body thermometer such that a Manchester summer, as scorching as it is, feels pleasantly cool. So I'm definitely enjoying the weather. For candle lighting this week, we're delighted to be joined by Megan.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, mitzivanu lahadlik ner, shel Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, amen. Thank you so much, Megan. With Yudin Nefesh over to Alex, which will be followed by Lechadodi with Ephraim this week.
Yudin Nefesh Avarachaman Mishoch Avdecha El Retzonecha Yarutz Avdecha Kemo Eremol Adarecha Yerablo Yedidotecha Mino Fetzo Vecholetam Adonai Ziva Olam Nafshi Cholat Avatecha Be'at lano amzivecha titchazek v'titrape ve'ayta la simchat olam vatik yehemuna rachamecha v'chosana al beina ovecha ki ze kama nichsavti lirot b'tiferet וחוסנה ואל תתעלם, יגאלנה ופרוס חביבי עלי, את סוכת שלומך, תאיר ארץ מרבדיך, נגילה ונשמחה בך מערב כי במועד, וכוננו כי ימי עולם. תילי לי 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 לי, תילי לי 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 לי, תילי לי 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 לי, תילי לי 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 לי, תילי לי 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 לי, תילי לי 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 לי.
Thank you, Alex. Ephraim, please.
Okay, Shalom. I am glad that my friend Saouda Thani, a graduate of Princeton, has joined us today. And also with me is my friend Cheryl, who used to be president of Republican Jewish Coalition. Just to remind you, Yemenites chant in a different way. They distinguish Aleph and Ayin. They distinguish He and Het. They distinguish Kaf and Qaf. So it's a Yemenite Hebrew is very close to Arabic, the way they speak. Okay. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נגבילה. And then everybody please say after me. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נגבילה. After every verse. Please, you can unmute yourself and say it. Well, I start again. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נגבילה. Everybody, whoever is. לך דודי
שבת נקבלה.
After every verse, okay. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדנו אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. Everybody, לך דודי לקראת
כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה.
לקראת שבת לכו ונלכו, כי היא מקור הברוכו, מראש מקדם נסוכו, סוף מעשה במחשבה תהילו, לך דודי לקראת כלה.
פני שבת נקבלה.
מקדש מלך מלוכו, ומיסי מתוקף הפכו, רב לך שבת בעמק חבכו, והוא יחמול עלי חמלו. לך דודי כלה, פני שבת נגבילה. התנערי מעופר קומי, לבשי בגדי תפארת עמי, על יד בן ישי בית הלחמי, קרבו על נפשי גאולו, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נגבילה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי בוערק ומאורים, אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עולייך נגלו. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נגבילה. לא תדבושי ולא תקולמי, מה תשתחי ومتهمي بن يسوعني عمي ونمنا تعير علت اللوم لخاطري وهيو لمشي صايك وريحك وكل ما بلعايك يوسيس علايك إلهايك كم صوص حاطون القلو لخاطري فني يمين وشمال تفراسي وأتادون تعريسي اليد ابن يشاي برسي ونسمخ ونغيلو لخدودي هوي بشولم اتارد بلو جنب سمخه وبسهلو توق امونك بوئی کلو 7 times بوئی کلو 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 لخدودين and we finish by saying a verse from the Song of Songs. You know, again, can be who be on the came a young although the Hinezeba, Madame de Kalahari, Macabes Alagbao, Macabes about Boti Lagano, Dika Long, Mori, Alberoni, Akalti, Am Divshi, Shatiti, Am Haki, Ochluraim, Shatu, Shahru. Yodim. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Thank you, Ephraim, and thank you, everyone. A lovely group performance and beautiful to hear your Yemenite tradition, Ephraim. To introduce our guest speaker for the week, we are delighted to be joined by Rabbi Block. Rabbi Block, I think you're on mute. Sorry, Rabbi Block. You need to unmute yourself, please, so we can hear you.
My light was blinking, so I thought I was unmuted. Thank you. Not the first time, won't be the last. Who would have thought that a young Jewish boy from New Jersey with a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from the University of Delaware would become the ambassador to Bahrain? I'm sure that Megan, Rachel, and Drew, I'm sure, Steve, that they never had any doubts that this is where you would end up. But I often wonder about some of the people back in New Jersey. We're all familiar with Pirkei Avot. Perhaps we've read it. Perhaps we have quoted from it. Or at the very least, we've heard others quote from it. And its ethical advice is good for the most part and reasonable. Rabbi Shemaiah said, love work, hate lordship, and stay far away from the government. Now, if Rabbi Shemaiah had known Steve and his positive involvement in our government, he would have said something like, love work, do not seek glory for yourself, and be involved in the government in order to elevate its value. Steve has demonstrated by his career that Rabbi Shemaiah was wrong. What can I say? He was wrong. Because a person of dignity and valor should be involved in the government. And the government has recognized Steve's achievements. by awarding him the Presidential Rank Award, several State Department Superior and Meritorious Honor Awards, and the Department of Defense Joint Civilian Commission Award. And he was recognized as a State Department Senior Foreign Policy Advisor in 2016. Steve has been an inspiration to the membership of Temple Beth Torah. Through his efforts, we sent backpacks of school supplies to Afghani students. Our contact with him has made political events both real and personal. And he's addressed our congregation in formal and informal settings. His career is now the part of the story that we tell. I mean, how many congregations can brag that they have an ambassador as a member of their small congregation? He has shared us with his overseas assignments that I think someone once said to play a game, where is Waldo? I think we'd have to say, where is Steve? Embassies in Egypt, Jordan, Turkey. In Washington, he served as Director of Terrorism, Finance, and Economic Sanctions Policy. The State Department's 24-hour Operations Center. Where are you, Steve? U.S. Embassy in Bahrain. You were in Baghdad, Iraq. Director for Arabian Peninsula Affairs at the State Department. Foreign Policy Advisor. Abu Dhabi. Assistant Chief in I hope, Megan, you're keeping a timeline so that Steve can look back and say, excuse me, where was I in? Or it's August. It must be Bahrain. Steve was nominated by President Biden to serve as U.S. Ambassador to the Kingdom of Bahrain, April 21, confirmed by the Senate in December of 2021. Steve, needless to say, we are all very proud of your achievements. And I want to end with another quote from Pirkei Avot. Rabbi Simeon, the son of Gamliel, said, "By three things the world is preserved, by truth, by judgment, and by peace." Steve, without realizing it, or maybe you did, you have lived by the advice of Ramban Simeon. Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. It's great to see you, and thank you for your kind words. And I know that there's other friends from the small but mighty congregation of Temple Beth Torah of Chantilly, Virginia. Thank you for joining, as well as other friends, family members, and colleagues. This is a great honor, and thank you, Hoda, for asking me to do this, and for the AGJC team, who was always so spectacular. As you may have understood, that this event is also bringing together my immediate family. So Megan is in New Jersey, Rachel and her husband Jordan are in Virginia, and Drew is in Brooklyn, while I'm in Bahrain. Thank goodness for technology. In my comments today, I will talk about U.S. policy towards Bahrain, the U.S. Embassy's activities, and my own experiences serving as a Jewish diplomat in Muslim countries. For those of you who heard Israeli Ambassador Nae speak about his work in Bahrain, my talk will be quite different. He is a pioneer, creating relationships from scratch. I have the luxury of being just the latest American ambassador in Bahrain. We have had diplomatic relations with Bahrain since it became independent in 1971. And in fact, Americans have played an important role in Bahrain for 130 years. The first Americans to settle in Bahrain was a mission from the Reformed Church of America. In 1893, a group of Americans came from New Jersey, my homeland, to deliver healthcare and education services. Of course, there was a religious element to their presence. but as the CEO of the American Mission Hospital told me just a few days ago, yes, the hospital and missionaries established, oh, and by the way, the hospital that they established back then still operates here and is still growing. But what he told me is that the primary objective of this mission was to help people. I would say this is their version of Tikkun Olam. In 1932, the oil company Caltex, a predecessor of today's Chevron, discovered the first commercially viable oil well in the Arabian Gulf in Bahrain. It was only a few years later that Saudi Arabia also discovered oil. Bahrain was a hub for ships and aircraft to refuel during World War II, and it became the US Navy's headquarters for the region after that war. And that presence continues today. Bahrain is the home of the US Fifth Fleet and the only Middle East service command that is permanently headquartered in the region. My point here is that people-to-people ties binding the United States and Bahrain are deep and enduring. As I tell my Navy counterpart, ambassadors and admirals may come and go, but the truly meaningful relationships develop between Americans and Bahrainis who live and work together as neighbors and friends. The embassy and my priorities are, number one, building our strategic relationship. Number two, deterring Iran. Number three, developing Bahrain's religious relationship with Israel. Number four, promoting US trade and investment. And number five, promoting American values to include democracy, human rights, and civil society. During a period of strategic competition and increased profile and presence of US rivals in the Gulf region, Bahrain is clear that it is firmly in the American and in the Western camp. It has relations with China and with Russia, but they are not deep and in no way threaten US interests. That said, we must always remain vigilant. I encourage American officials to visit Bahrain and Bahraini officials to visit Washington for official meetings so that they can compare ideas and figure out a joint way forward on our challenges. Likewise, we are eager to support visits of American and other interest groups who want to learn more about Bahrain and its relationships, including with Israel. Friends from the AGJC are on the line, and we welcome their visit here in just another few weeks. Finally, a few words about my career. I've been a State Department Foreign Service officer for 31 years, and I've spent well over half that time serving outside of America. And all of that time has been in Muslim countries. You heard the rabbi say, I've been in Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Afghanistan, Iraq, Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey. I admit, when I joined State, I never thought a Jewish kid from New Jersey would ever serve in the Arab and Muslim world, but that's how it worked out, and believe me, it's been an adventure. While my family and I have experienced prejudice and discrimination for being an American, I've never faced anti-Semitism. My children, Rachel and Drew, in fact, have dealt with more anti-Semitism than me, from classmates at overseas schools who had never met a Jew before, or who confused being Jewish with being Israeli. I don't hide my religion, but I also don't advertise it, although by now, at least in Bahrain, people generally know. It has never been an issue here, likely because of the people's support for and acceptance of Bahrain's own Jewish community. Wherever I serve, I try to get to know and interact with Jews there. In Kabul and in Baghdad, I met what I believe were among the last Jews in those cities. In Cairo, we became close to the few remaining Egyptian Jews, as well as the sizable Israeli community there. And I'll never forget attending the first Israeli Passover in Jordan in the spring of 1995 after the peace treaty the previous year. That concludes my comments. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Shabbat Shalom.
Ambassador Bundy, thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little more about your story and the story of Americans in Bahrain. It's been great to have you with us over recent weeks participating in the call, and it's a special occasion to have your family here as well. And it's been great to hear a little more about your career and the activities of the embassy. So thank you so much. Rabbi Abadi, please.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador Brody, for your inspiring words. It's truly a privilege to represent the United States, of course, and to be a member of the Jewish people. Many a times we do things without thinking about, or we say things without thinking about them. What would be the consequences of those actions? Would they be good? Would they be not good? Of course, our actions are measured by different people. Either they're good or they're bad, depending on who are we affecting with those actions that we did. And of course, many a times our political views or our societal views, what we see as good, they see as bad, and what we see as bad, they might see as good. And so, as someone has said several years ago, now the world is all about relativity. Everything is relative in a sense. However, we as Jews, we have a compass, and that compass is our Torah, our Bible. And that Bible is not relative. It tells us what's good, and it tells us what's not good. It tells us what's right, and it tells us what's not right. It tells us what's correct, and it tells us what it's not correct. And so at least we have kind of a compass, a place to refer to when we do something good and when we do something that is not good. But we ought to use that dawn, if I would say, that gift that God has given us, which is free will, to decide by ourselves based on our compass. Our actions are good, our actions are not good, or not good. The parasha this week, Akef Tishme'un, the verse says, and it shall be that you would listen to those ordinances, to the commandment, and you observe them and you perform them, then God will safeguard the covenant with you and will shower you with kindness as he has promised your forefathers, and all the blessings, beautiful blessings really, that are found in the parasha of today based on our actions. And so we definitely ought to realize that when we do something, whatever we do has a consequence. And when we're doing the right thing, and we do the right thing based on our compass that we have, our eternal compass, there's nothing to fear. There's nothing to worry about. Because when we do the right thing, then we know that the consequences will be the right thing also. And so, and in fact, the parasha continues to say that you have nothing to fear about the consequences of your good actions. Of course, of your bad actions, we have plenty to fear and to worry. First and foremost, what did we do wrong to the other people by our bad actions? And secondly, if that boomerang will come back to us, so to speak. When we do something good, something correct, the parasha tells us there's nothing to fear about. There's nothing to fear the mighty nations. There's nothing to fear evil. There's nothing to fear of anyone, because we have done the right thing and we have done the correct thing. And yes, definitely the boomerang will come back. When we do good things to other people, that boomerang of goodness and kindness will come back to us. Of course, when we do things, we ought not to expect that. We ought to do the good things because of that's what we ought to do. The world is to do goodness. God created the world to do goodness. But however, the boomerang does come back. And so when we do our next action, when we say our next thing, we should try to think, is what I'm doing goes well with the compass, the eternal compass that we have as a people, as a nation? If that's the case, then go ahead. Let's do it and not be afraid of anything. Nothing to be afraid of, the truth and of goodness. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi Abadi. Shabbat Shalom. Hope all is well with you and the family in New York. Now we turn to Alex, who's going to read a section of the Parsha in Hebrew, followed by Drew, who will translate to English for us.
So before I start the reading, many of you would have noticed for many weeks and for more than a year, a lady joining us on the Zoom from Geneva. Her name was Betty Bracha. Unfortunately, she left us this week. I would like, in name of the AGJC and in name of the Jewish community of Dubai, to send my condolences to her children, to Tiri Bracha, who is the president of the Sha'arei Mizrach community in Dubai. And it was a great lady, and she will be missed. כי אדוני אלוהיכם הוא אלוהי האלוהים ואדוני האדמים, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, אשר לא יישא פנים ולא ייקח שוחד, עושה משפט יתום ואלמנה, ואוהב גר לתת לו לחם ושמלה, ואהבתם את הגר כי גרים הייתם בארץ מצרים, את אדוני אלוהיך תראה אותו, תעבוד ובו תדבק ובשמו תשבע, הוא תהילתך והוא אלוהיך אשר עשה איתך את הגדולות ואת הנוראות האלה אשר ראו עיניך, ב70 נפש ירדו אבותיך מצרימה, ואתה שמך אדוני אלוהיך כחורבי השמיים לרוב.
For the Lord your God is God supreme and Lord supreme, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God who shows no favor and takes no bribe, but upholds the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and befriends the stranger, providing him with food and clothing. You too must befriend the stranger, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. You must revere the Lord your God, only him shall you worship. To him shall you uphold fast, and by his name shall you swear. He is your glory, and he is your God, who wrought you for those marvelous, awesome deeds that you saw with your own eyes. Your ancestors went down to Egypt, 70 persons in all, and now the Lord your God has made you as numerous as the stars of heaven.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Drew. Now for the prayer for peace with Rachel.
Lord of peace, divine ruler, to whom peace belongs, master of peace, creator of all things, may it be your will to put an end to war and bloodshed on earth and to spread a great and wonderful peace over the whole world. Help us and save us all, and let us cling tightly to the virtue of peace. Let there be a truly great peace between every person and their fellow, and let there be no discord between people, even in their hearts. Let us never shame any person on earth, great or small. Let it be granted unto us to fulfill thy commandment, to love thy neighbor as thyself, with all our hearts and souls and bodies and possessions. God, who is peace, bless us with peace.
Amen. Thank you, Rachel. Jean, with the prayer for the GCC countries.
Thank you, Jake. And like several of the members of the Dubai community, I'm also in my hometown today, or home area. I'm in New York. Nice to see you all. And thank you to Ambassador Bundy for the presentation today. It's my honor to read the prayer for the welfare of the governments of the GCC. May he who gives salvation to kings and dominion to princes, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, who delivers his servant David from the evil sword, who makes a way in the sea and a path through the mighty waters, bless and protect, guard and help, exalt, magnify, and uplift his majesties, the King of Saudi Arabia, the King of Bahrain, the Sultan of Oman, the President of the UAE, the Emir of Kuwait, the Emir of Qatar, and all of their crown princes. And may the Supreme King of Kings, in his mercy, put Put a spirit of wisdom and understanding into their hearts and the hearts of all their counselors and officials to deal kindly with us, the house of Jacob, and all the people of this land. Be their shelter and stronghold, and let them not days and in ours. May these lands be blessed with stability and prosperity and peace. May this be his will, and let us say Amen.
Amen. Thanks so much, Jean. To sing us out, Alex with Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei, Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem LeShalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei, Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bachuni LeShalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei, Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tzedchem LeShalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei, Malchei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.